You think you know politics? You think it is all boring speeches, suits, and diplomatic handshakes? Think again. Welcome to the second half of our deep dive into the madness of Australia, where the political history reads less like a textbook and more like a fever dream script rejected by Saturday Night Live for being too unrealistic. Did you know that Australia is the only country in the world that lost a prime minister at sea and decided the best way to honor him was to name a swimming pool after him? It sounds like a dark joke, but it is real life, and that is just the appetizer. We're about to meet a national leader who held a world record for drinking beer, and a farmer who got so annoyed with the government that he legally started his own country just to avoid paying taxes. These are the stories the travel brochures won't tell you. So before we jump into the deep end of this political comedy, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe, because trust me, you are going to want a front row seat for this circus.
War!
Let us start with perhaps the most ironically named building in the Southern Hemisphere. In most cultures, if a beloved leader drowns, you might build a statue looking out to sea, or maybe a lighthouse to guide others to safety. But Australia has a very specific, twisted sense of humor. This brings us to the story of Harold Holt, the 17th Prime Minister of Australia. In 1967, at the height of the Cold War, Holt was the most powerful man in the country. He was known for being fit, active, and an avid spear fisherman. On a Sunday morning in December, he went to Cheviot Beach near Melbourne for a swim. The surf was rough, turbulence was high, but Holt, perhaps suffering from that classic Australian overconfidence, dove in anyway. And that was it. He was never seen again. A sitting prime minister of a G7 nation simply dissolved into the ocean. A massive manhunt, or rather, ocean hunt, ensued. It was one of the largest search operations in Australian history. Conspiracy theories exploded. Some said he faked his death to run away with a mistress. Others claimed he was a Chinese spy and had been picked up by a waiting submarine. But the reality is likely much simpler. The Australian Ocean is a monster that does not care about your political rank. The rip current took him. But the punchline comes later. To memorialize him, the city of Melbourne built a state-of-the-art swimming complex. They named it the Harold Holt Memorial Swimming Centre. Yes, a swimming pool named after a man who famously couldn't swim back to shore. It is the ultimate example of Australian taking the piss, a cultural trait where nothing is sacred, not even tragic death. If Harold Holt represents the tragic irony of Australian leadership, Bob Hawke represents its party spirit. In any other country, a politician with a drinking problem is a scandal. In Australia, it's a resume builder. Before Bob Hawke became the Prime Minister in the 1980s, he was already famous, not for his policies, but for his liver. In his days at Oxford University, Bob Hawke set a Guinness World Record for the fastest consumption of a yard of ale. That's a glass tube holding 2.5 pints, or about 1.4 liters of beer. He downed the entire thing in 11 seconds. Try to count to 11 right now. It's not a long time. This feat didn't ruin his career, it made it. The Australian public looked at this man who could inhale lager like a vacuum cleaner and thought, finally, a leader we can relate to. He went on to become the most popular prime minister in history. His legendary status was cemented in 1983 when Australia won the America's Cup in sailing, ending 132 years of American dominance. The nation went into hysteria. Hawke appeared on live national television wearing a suit jacket drenched in champagne and delivered the most famous line in Australian political history. Any boss who sacks anyone for not coming in today is a bum. He effectively gave the entire continent a day off to be hungover. That is the kind of populism Australians can get behind. But sometimes the government pushes too hard, and the quirky Australian spirit pushes back. This leads us to the story of Prince Leonard of Hutt River. In 1970, the government introduced strict quotas on wheat production. A farmer named Leonard Casley in Western Australia did the math and realized the government was going to bankrupt him. Most people would hire a lawyer or protest. Leonard decided to secede.
Digging through dusty law books, he found a loophole in the British Treason Act of 1495. On April 21, 1970, he served a formal notice of secession to the Australian government. He declared his 75-square-kilometer farm an independent sovereign state, the Principality of Hutt River. He crowned himself Prince Leonard I. The Australian government was baffled. They couldn't exactly send tanks to a wheat farm without looking ridiculous. So for decades, they mostly ignored him. But Prince Leonard took it seriously. He designed a flag, minted currency, issued stamps, and even printed passports. Tourists would flock there to get their passports stamped by the prince himself. He declared war on Australia for a few days just to get recognized under the Geneva Convention, and then declared peace. His micronation lasted for 50 years, outlasting 7 Australian prime ministers, proving that a stubborn farmer is the most dangerous political force in the country. Speaking of political force, let us talk about how Australians actually vote. In the US, getting people to the polls is a struggle. In Australia, it is the law. Compulsory voting means if you are over 18 and don't show up, you get a fine. It sounds authoritarian, but the Australians found a way to make it delicious. They invented the democracy sausage. Election Day in Australia is not about civic duty, it is about the barbecue. Almost every polling station, usually at a school or church, sets up a sausage sizzle fundraiser. It's a humble meal, a cheap beef sausage on a slice of white bread with burnt onions and sauce. But it's a cultural icon. The smell of grilled meat is the primary motivator for Australian democracy. There are websites that track which polling booths have sausages and which have cake, allowing voters to plan their route based on snacks. If a polling booth runs out of sausages, it makes national news headlines. It perfectly sums up the Australian character. We will do what the government tells us, but you better feed us first. So, we have swimming pools named after drowned leaders, beer-chugging champions, farmer princes, and democracy fueled by processed meat. But if you think the politics are weird, wait until you see the culture. In the next part, we're going to explore the bizarre obsessions of the Australian people. Why do they feel the need to build giant, ugly statues of fruit in every town? What is the drop bear, the mythical monster that terrifies tourists but suspiciously never attacks locals? And the epic saga of why Burger King had to change its name because a tiny takeaway shop beat them to it. The cultural deep dive is just heating up. If you want to start a riot in an Australian airport, there is one easy way to do it. Just hold up a jar of Vegemite and say it tastes bad. You will immediately be tackled by a mob of angry locals defending their national treasure. But let's be honest with ourselves. To the rest of the world, Vegemite is a war crime in a jar. It's a thick, black, sticky paste made from leftover bruise yeast. That's right, it's the sludge scraped from the bottom of a beer barrel mixed with salt and vegetables. It smells like industrial grease and looks like road tar. When Americans try it for the first time on YouTube, they always make the same fatal mistake. They scoop it out with a spoon like it's Nutella or peanut butter. If you do that, your taste buds will die a painful death. The flavor is so salty and umami-rich that it hits you like a punch in the face. The secret, which Australians guard with their lives, is the ratio. You need a lot of butter and a microscopic scrape of Vegemite. It's homeopathic food. You don't eat Vegemite, you whisper the word Vegemite over your toast. But if you grow up with it, this black sludge is the taste of home. It's rich in vitamin B, which might explain why Australians have so much energy to run away from all the spiders. But if Vegemite is the king of savory, then the queen of sweet is a dish so sophisticated it belongs in a Michelin star restaurant. Just kidding. It's called Fairy Bread. This is the cornerstone of every Australian birthday party. It consists of the cheapest, whitest, most processed slice of bread you can find, smeared with margarine and covered in hundreds and thousands, which are tiny round sugar sprinkles. That's it. Bread, butter, and sugar. It's the culinary equivalent of giving up. But don't dare insult it. If you tell an Australian adult that fairy bread is just for kids, they will look at you with genuine pity. There is a primal joy in the crunch of the sprinkles against the soft, doughy bread. It is a sugar rush that defines a nation's childhood. It proves that in Australia, you do not need fancy pastries, you just need colored sugar and low standards. Once you have filled your stomach with yeast paste and sugar bread, you might want to have a conversation with a local. Good luck with that. Australians speak English, but they speak a version of English that has been put through a wood chipper. It is called strine. The golden rule of Australian English is efficiency through laziness. If a word has more than 2 syllables, it must be shortened. Afternoon becomes arvo. Service station becomes servo. McDonald's becomes Macca's. Ambulance becomes ambo. Even the country itself, Australia, is too much work to say, so it just becomes Straya. It is a language designed to allow you to speak without opening your mouth too wide, which is a smart evolutionary trait to prevent flies from flying in. If you hear a sentence like, "I'm going to the servo this arvo to get some ciggies and a sanger before the Barbie," do not panic. You are not having a stroke. You are just being invited to a barbecue. Just say, "No worries, mate," and you will be fine. No worries is the national motto. It is the answer to everything. I crashed your car. No worries. My leg was eaten by a shark. No worries. It is a philosophy of stoic optimism. And finally, we come to the capital city. If you ask a foreigner what the capital of Australia is, 90% will say Sydney. The other 10% might guess Melbourne. Almost no one says Canberra, and that is exactly how the Australians want it. Canberra is a city that exists solely because Sydney and Melbourne were acting like jealous toddlers. In the early 20th century, both major cities wanted to be the capital. The rivalry was intense and bitter. Neither would back down. So the government came up with a compromise. They would build a brand new city in the middle of a sheep paddock, roughly halfway between the two. They chose a spot in the bush, miles from the ocean, freezing cold in winter and scorching hot in summer, and said, "Here is the capital." It is a planned city, full of roundabouts and politicians, and for a long time it was known as the most boring place on Earth. It is the only capital city in the world where you can see kangaroos grazing on the lawns of Parliament House. It perfectly summarizes the Australian spirit. If we can't agree on who's the best, we will just pick a random field and put the politicians there so they don't annoy the rest of us. So there you have it, Australia. A land where the birds win wars, the mountains burn forever, the food is terrifying, the language is lazy, and the capital city is a geographical compromise. It is a continent that tries to kill you every day, but does it with a smile and a "G'day, mate." It is a place where logic goes to die, but adventure comes to live. If you are brave enough to visit, just remember, check your shoes for spiders, don't mention the Emu War, and for the love of God, spread the Vegemite thinly. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the weirdest country on Earth. If you survived this video without being bitten by a snake, hit that like button. If you want more stories about the insanity of our planet, subscribe and ring the bell. And tell me in the comments, would you try the fairy bread or are you too scared of the sugar rush? I am Infinite Fantastic Facts. Stay curious, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video.